Welcome everyone to Sleep is Power by Dr. Kevin Gilliland. Kevin will share for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A button there on your Zoom, and we'll get to those at the end. So Kevin, take us away.
Okay. Look, it's, when you asked me if I could hop on and talk about sleep, I'm like, yeah, how can you not talk about sleep right now? Come on now, why can't advance for me? There we go. I'll start with this, I'll end with this. There's no getting around it. Sleep is power. It's one of the most important things actually for our physical health and our mental health. One of the reasons we're talking about it so much is it's one of the first things that actually gets disrupted when we are going through stressful times. And sometimes that's medically. Sometimes it's related to our mood, anxiety, changes in job. And what's really important right now is sleep. It's funny. We've been studying humans in medicine for a long time, but we ignored sleep. Not until the 30s, maybe the 40s, researchers thought, well, sleep's just, the body's not doing anything. And it was right about then we realized, no, the body's doing a whole lot when it sleeps. In fact, it's what allows us to function the way we function during the daytime. So we'll talk about normal sleep, and then we're going to talk about how sleep gets disrupted. And then we'll talk about, okay, in general, how do we do with sleep? So the reason we talk about it is it's often a symptom that gets disrupted when we struggle. And in the midst of the COVID, it's probably one of the top complaints that I hear when I sit down with people. I know I've struggled with mine. Okay, so here's a quick question for you. Okay, Ari, in general, you thinking, I'll let you read. Take a gander at it. Think it's like less than 7.5 to 8 hours is what's recommended. So you go, okay, what's your answer on that? Well, actually, the correct answer is B. Sleep loss, that is if you still adhere to the Geneva Convention, that sleep deprivation is considered inhumane, physical, and psychological torture, which really kind of begs the question. If you can't do it to somebody else, why is it okay to do it to you? It's not. And we have two kinds of sleep problems. Our sleep problems are what they call complete or total sleep deprivation. That's where you, hopefully in college, you pull an all-nighter. That's total sleep deprivation. Partial sleep deprivation is where you start shaving a few hours off of and yes, recommended 7.5 to 8 hours. We're not infants anymore, so we don't sleep 18 hours a day, even though that sounds kind of nice. It's 7.5 to 8 hours a day is what's recommended. So it is mental and physical torture. It's not okay. And you go, okay, there's some critical things that actually go on when we sleep, like physically, our immune system, that's where it gets recharged. It's where our cognitive processes get rejuvenated. It's where we sort of bring together our experiences of the day and hang on. That's how our intellect grows. Wisdom, knowing how to make practical decisions, that all occurs there. And so you go, okay. And there have been so many fascinating studies. It's really, so they took a group of healthy students, right? You don't need as much sleep when you're in your late teens, early 20s. They took healthy students, sleep deprived them for 6 days, 6 nights in a row, just moderately. They ended up with about 5 hours to 6 hours of sleep a night. Then they assessed their overall health. These are young adults. They had higher blood pressure. Their some insulin pre-diabetic measures were up. And they also had excessive levels of cortisol and lower factors in their blood that fight the common flu. Now, all of that corrected after some sleep recovery, but you go, wow, that's healthy young people, also known as not me. You know, one of the many things I've learned in COVID, this is just a side note. I've learned that I'm getting older, because if you're in the high risk group because you're old, I'm like, gosh, dog it, that's painful. All right, let's go to the next. Come on, computer. There we go. All right. Now, let's talk a little nuts and bolts about our sleep. Sleep architecture. That top left corner, those are stages. You don't need to know N1, N2, N3. Everybody's probably heard of REM, rapid eye movement. The bottom there is 0 to 7. It goes a little bit beyond 7.5 to 8. That's what our sleep looks like. That's the architecture of sleep. All of our sleep looks like that. And what you'll see is it usually takes us anywhere from, depending on age, it does vary with age, it takes 10 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. That's the appropriate amount. If your answer is, oh, I fall asleep right away, like my head hits the pillow, yeah, I'm sorry. That's one of the indications you're chronically sleep depriving yourself. So you've probably just shaved an hour every night. So now you're at 6 hours and 6 hours and 5 hours. So if you fall asleep suddenly, that may be chipping away at your sleep. So we start shallow, then we drop into deep sleep. That's where our bodies really restore. Our brains are kind of idle, and that's where our bodies are kind of moving and fidgeting. And then as you come up in that first little skinny yellow peak, that's the REM cycle. The first, and you can see how those peaks go from skinny and they get bigger? REM starts out with short intervals, and then they get longer each interval. We have about 4 a night. And it's REM sleep that our body is stationary and our mind is going, not 90 to nothing, but our mind's working. Actually, our body temperature increases. That's where you'll see people's eyes moving back and forth. So that's REM. And that occurs about every 90 minutes for all of us. Now, the other fascinating thing is we don't start sleeping through the night till we're about 7. Once from 7 on, we start sleeping through the night. And yes, study after study after study, we need 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. More if we're in the midst of some really demanding physical things. Athletes that really push their bodies will sleep 9, 10, 11 hours a night, or people undergoing some significant medical procedures. Why? Because that's where the body heals, right? We know that that's where the body heals. Think about now with COVID, none of us want to get this. If we do get it, we want to fight it as best as we can. That starts with sleep. They've also done studies looking at how much does sleep deprivation contribute to mental health diagnosis? And in the 20-something-year-olds, it's a factor, it's 3 or 4 times the rate of especially mood and anxiety if you have chronic partial sleep deprivation, which is what the majority of us do. So then the graph on the bottom shows you how the percent that we spend in each sleep cycle, right? A lot in light sleep, not a ton in REM, but REM and deep sleep ends up being about the same, and about 5% of all of that is awake. So if you're like, okay, Kev, you've convinced me, I got this. So if I go to bed at 10 every night, let's say, I'm really structured, and I wake up at 6 in the morning, we're good, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's good. You'll be chronically sleep deprived. Yeah, because here's a notion of sleep research that I don't think it really actually dawned on me This is quasi embarrassing. Until maybe a year ago, I just thought, okay, I went to bed at 10, got up at 6, we're good to go. No, it's TIB. I have a feeling TIB stands for something else. I can't, but it's time in bed. So if I'm in bed from 10 to 6, I'm not asleep for 8 hours. Now this changes as we age, but if you're 50, that 8 hours, you're going to get about 85% of that will be asleep. If you're 60, it drops to about 83%. If you're in your 70s, it drops even a little more. So it's only 80% of that 8 hours. Now, if you're in your 40s, it's about 86, 87%. If you're in your 20s, the total amount of sleep and time in bed is close. It's in the 90%. So once we leave our 20s, we do start to have some decline in sleep. So if you're wanting to really feel the physical and mental health benefits of sleep, you have to be in bed more than 8 hours. And trust me, when I say that out loud, I'm like, man, seriously? I feel like there's so much more I could get done. And well, yeah, you're just going to run out of juice. You're out of energy. 100 years ago, 1910, we were sleeping 9 hours on average, 9 hours a night. Now, on average, we're about 7 hours. Now, that's not the reason we have more mental health and physical issues, but we're trending in a bad direction. And if you think about your phones, most of us don't leave home without them because we use them for everything from Google Maps to all manner of things, because I don't remember anybody's phone number now. But would you ever think about, like, when's the last time you went to get in bed and you forgot to plug your phone in? And you kind of stopped for a second. Did you go, I'm good. I don't need to plug it in. No, I don't know anybody that would do that. Like literally, if I left my phone in my car, parked 200 yards from my house, and it was a torrential downpour, I'd probably go out at 11:30 at night to get it in my shorts and flip-flops. Because you're like, no, we wouldn't dream of starting the day with our battery low on our phone because they're little computers now. Well, then why in the world do I mentally think that's okay for me to start my body like that? It's not. So we got to be mindful. And if you're going to steal sleep, we have to be smart about it. I do steal sleep occasionally. We all do, whether that's you just had a baby or you just changed jobs or you're trying to care for an ill elderly parent or a loved one. You have a big project. I get that. But we have to be mindful and thoughtful about it because candidly, I do steal sleep. I do. But I'm far more thoughtful about it than I used to be. And for the past 7.5 months, honestly, I can't steal sleep. Because of the daily stress, which drains our daily stress of COVID would be like streaming music on your phone. It's just going to wear your battery out. You're going to for sure have to charge your phone. Well, it's the same for us. This daily COVID is draining our battery. It's the number one thing I check on my dashboard for my personal health and my physical and psychological health is sleep. I have been more mindful of it since COVID than anything else because that's probably the single best thing I can do to strengthen my immune system. So I'm not saying don't steal it. And I also don't want to be hypocritical because I do steal sleep. I do hypocritical. I do steal sleep. But man, I'm not kidding. I do not steal sleep right now. Now, if my sleep is disrupted, and by the way, once you're beyond your 40s, and I don't mind sharing, I'm a little bit past my 40s, 40 years old now. I'm beyond 40. We start to have some sleep disruptions about 3 hours into sleep. And if you are having problems, oh, I don't know that I can go back. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, so you see those peaks of REM sleep? There's three kinds of problems with sleep, and we're going to talk about sleep later. Falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up early. It's called initial insomnia, can't fall asleep, middle, in the middle part of my sleep, middle insomnia, or late insomnia. I woke up early. And there's a reason that you think the universe or something, if you're a conspiracy, have you ever had like a couple of nights, either in a row or in a week, where it's like you wake up at 2:33 in the morning, you're like, okay, this is very strange. And don't look at me like I'm a nutter. You do. We wake up. It's almost that's because of these cycles. They're very, very predictable. Well, that's also in REM sleep is our shallow sleep. And that's where you'll hear a noise. And if you hear a noise, you'll startle awake, or it'll pull you a little more shallow. And if you went to bed worried about something, thinking about something, or you made the mistake of watching some disruptive movie, when you get a little shallow, you're going to hear your mind making noise and you'll wake up. So that's a little bit on the sleep architecture. So you may not be a rocket scientist, but we're pretty much astronauts right now, or we're living like astronauts. And I love, I worked with a sleep researcher that had been at Harvard for a number of years. He worked on 4 space shuttle missions. I just love the guy. It's one of the most wonderful people I've worked with. But what's fascinating is they regulate and monitor the astronauts' daily schedule, because that cycle, that circadian rhythm, it's hardwired in us, and it's triggered by by a couple of things, but light exposure is one of the biggest things that tells us when to sleep, and it resets every 24 hours, unless you're an astronaut. How long is the sort of that day for the astronauts? That would be 90 minutes. So they do help them fall asleep and they help them wake up. But in space, I love this description. Crew members may experience high workloads, anxiety, excitement, stress, and noisy and often uncomfortable environments to sleep in. If that's not COVID, I don't know what is. I mean, that is just our world right now. And one of the main focuses of those shuttle missions is we have to make sure these guys are not stealing sleep, guys gender neutral, because it's pretty hard doing what they do. So let's talk about, okay, well, what are the qualities of good sleepers? What do I need to know? And there is so much information. There's a ton of data out there. Now, let me say real quick before I'm sure there's some people that are like, I sleep 5 hours and I do just fine. I'm great. If you think you don't need 7.5 or 8 hours of sleep, you for sure do. You absolutely for sure do. There is a small percentage of people that do quite well with less than 7.5 and 8 hours. Now, when I say small percent, we can't all say, yeah, that's me, because that makes it the majority. So assume you're not the exception, assume you're the rule. And if you do function really well with less, that's awesome. Then this really isn't about you. Maybe this information will help people you know. And if you do get by with less sleep and function great, don't be rude, because it's hard to do. And most of us need more. So qualities of good sleepers. They have good routines. Again, every 24 hours, like clockwork, our circadian rhythm resets. When you get tired during the day, when do you get tired? You ever get drowsy during the day? Think about it. When do you get drowsy during the day? I can tell you, and I'm no mind reader. Somewhere between 2:30 to 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock, because we have a dip in our circadian rhythm. There you go. Why? Because it's a routine. Good sleepers go to bed and get up at the same time. A lot of them do that even on Saturdays and Sundays, or even vacations, because it helps promote healthier functioning physically and mentally. So have a good routine. If you're struggling, go, okay, I want to be able to, oops, sorry, it keeps shifting over. I don't know if that's me or Tim, or there's no telling. It's probably me. And so routine means go to bed same time, wake up same time. They also have good sleep hygiene, which is kind of an odd word, but sleep hygiene is have a quiet room, have a dark room, right? Dark for a reason. It needs to be dark because light's the number one thing that sets off our bodies to sleep. That's why, God love them, Apple and Steve Jobs, when they keep talking about the new iPhone or the new MacBook, how so bright, or the new TVs are like so bright, it's like real. Yeah, it is like real. That's why they say, don't look at your screens. And funny enough, if you stayed in a hotel, God, where was I traveling? I was traveling. Oh, Tim and I was in Colorado maybe a month ago. And so stopped at a hotel on the way up. I'm not kidding you. The little clock readout on the clock in the room, got in bed, turned the lights out, and I was like, is there like a campfire or headlights of a truck in my room? I've never seen such a bright clock in my life. Well, guess what? Looking at studies, those things actually promote alertness. So I put a towel over it. Good night. It's crazy. So light, sound, temperature. So let me help you out. If you argue with your spouse or partner about what the temperature should be, research has found and knows the ideal temperature for us humans to sleep at. What do you think it is? What's the ideal? Let me help you. 65. Wow, Kev, that's cold. Yes, it is. Why? Why does that help us sleep? Well, it has to do with a fancy term called thermoregulation. So when we get in bed, our bodies, it's crazy, our bodies start cooling off naturally. So they start cooling until we wake up, then they heat back up. So if the room's cooler, your body gets cooler quicker and you wake back up. True story. This was just a week ago. Last week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, I have one of those Nest thermostats. Love and hate that thing. For some reason, it pushed the temperature up at like 1 in the morning to like 70 degrees. And I woke up like that. I'm like, what in the, I got up and I'm like, why did it do? So temperature. So have it the right temperature, right darkness, noise. Now, if you sleep fine with light, peripheral light, then that's great. Don't worry about it. But if you're trying to improve your sleep, Google, look up sleep hygiene. Tim, I'll shoot you I've got a really good article that lists out sleep hygiene. You can also search it, but it's really, really critical. And they steal sleep thoughtfully, right? Because they value the importance of sleep. We can do it, but we have to be careful how much we do it. And the other thing about sleep hygiene is be mindful of two things. So I got two boys. My youngest are boys. I remember my wife, I was getting ready for bed one night and she comes stomping upstairs. And I was just getting ready for bed, you know, the bath and read the book and get in bed. And she came in and looked at me and I was like, I instantly knew I was in trouble. And I'm like, what? And she looked at me and she goes, you can't go from a water park to WrestleMania and think they're going to fall asleep. And I was like, yeah, you know, when you say it like that, that's kind of, that may be, it's starting to make sense. Well, the same applies to us. If you're going to have difficult conversations or watch things that stir you up, there is so much right now that stirs us up. It's not even funny. You should not be reading about COVID, politics, race, gender, work, the economy. Don't read any of that stuff a solid hour and a half to 2 hours before you go to bed. You want to gradually prepare your mind and body for sleep. I don't care if you watch Dexter or Breaking Bad. I couldn't care less. Probably not going to help you settle to go to bed. So be mindful of that. You have to allow your mind to settle and your body to settle. Don't have difficult conversations with family or spouse before you step into bed. And don't eat a big meal. Big meals require our bodies to work. That can disrupt our sleep. And by the way, I know a lot of people that go to Sierra are in recovery. Not everybody's in recovery. Alcohol disrupts our sleep. And we Americans, well, it's around the world right now, are consuming way more alcohol to deal with stress. Bad idea. And to help sleep. That's a really bad idea, because even though you may fall asleep, it actually, when we study it, it compromises REM sleep, which is where our brains restore. So we actually are we're stealing some sleep and the restorative part of our bodies and our brains when we use alcohol to fall asleep, even a little bit. And we don't burn as many calories the next day if we're walking or working out. And sleep deprivation increases obesity, because when we're sleep deprived, it monkeys with some regions and hormones that have an effect on our appetite. So there you go. That's good sleep. So how many nights in a row does it take to impair your performance? There you go. What are you thinking? How many nights of just stealing a little bit of sleep, which is less than 7? I'm being generous. Less than 7.5 to 8. The answer is A, after 2 nights. And they have done a lot of studies on this. And this is a really important concept. It's called sleep debt. So let's say I get 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep Tuesday and Wednesday night. And I go, well, Thursday night, I'm going to make sure I get my 8.5 hours of sleep. And I'll be, no, it's not how it works. It's extremely difficult. Most of the time we can't recover it in one night. And we've studied this a lot too. So from 3 nights on, we start to accumulate sleep debt where we need almost 10 hours in bed to start to recover. And actually they did a study looking at healthy volunteers after 5 nights of 5 to 6 hours. And then 3 nights of, I want to say it's 8 hours in bed, didn't recover their sleep debt. So be mindful when you sleep deprive yourself or partially one night because something's bothering you or you just stayed up or you couldn't sleep. Really try to recover that as quickly as you can the next night. Biggest mistakes, poor planning. Again, you cannot go from the water park to WrestleMania and fall asleep. Food, the biggest violator on food is alcohol, but also big meals require our bodies to work, and we don't want our body or our mind to work. We're trying to get it to rest and to calm. It's a law of nature. It's like gravity. I don't mind arguing about things in life and can I do it, can I not do it, but man, I'm not arguing about gravity. It's just not worth it. So, those are the 3 probably biggest. And right now, man, I tell you, this is such a difficult time for us for so many reasons. Sleep is hands down. Almost everybody I've seen the past 7-8 months has struggled with sleep. I've struggled with sleep. And I mean, I've just pulled out all the stops to try to get it better. So, and I don't let it go. I don't ignore it. So those are our biggest mistakes. So I literally could have spent half a day drilling down into all the pieces on sleep and how it affects our physical health. Literally makes us vulnerable for the common cold and flu. We've studied that. Well, that's this virus. It's the flu. It's very similar to the flu. It's worse than the flu, but it's very similar. You go, okay, well, when we're sleep deprived, I don't want that. It also increases our blood pressure. It dumps extra cortisol into our system. I don't burn calories as well. And there are a lot of us that have struggled with food during this time. By the way, alcohol is a food, but other food, just out of boredom and stress, not going to burn it off as well. You're also not going to physically perform as well or mentally perform as well. It does bump rates of mood as well as anxiety. And it's one of the first things I focus on when I work with people that come to Innovation 360 is I ask about sleep and I'm like, all right, we need to step in and do everything we can to start improving that. Because if there is no amount of therapy or anxiety meds or mood meds or blood pressure meds that can overcome sleep deprivation. So, let me see. There you go. Want to give some time. Tim, you still there? You can unmute if you want.
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, so here, let me touch on, I'll hit, let me hit on a couple of those. How do you monitor sleep? Love it. Fitbit's a great one. You know what, really, it's a separate system. And I did some work with a really large company that I really enjoy working with. And they've got a relationship with a company called Whoop, WHOOP. And I learned, so I wore that band for some time. I still wear it now. And it really focuses on sleep because I struggle with sleep. I have a really active mind. And I started having middle insomnia when I'm in my shallow sleep. I started struggling with that about 14, 15 years ago. And it's gotten better with some of the things that I found that help, but either a Fitbit, some of the Garmin's, I think Apple Watch will, Whoop also does as well. Naps, okay, true story. When they were getting furniture for my office, I was like, hey, and I want a couch. And I want a couch that's at least 6'2", 6'4" inches long. I'm not that tall. I'm like 5'11". Yeah. Huge fan of the nap. They've done tons of research on the nap. Get this. They did a research looking at 5-minute naps, 10-minute naps, 20-minute naps, and 30-minute naps. What duration was the best nap? The 10-minute nap. Okay, that one surprised me. Honestly, it surprised me. 5-minute nap, don't do it. It's a waste of time. 30-minute nap, you're going to actually feel groggy, and you're going to have to fight through that, and then you'll feel better. So here's the thing with naps. Remember that sleep cycle? When it's, what I do when I nap is I'll set my phone alarm for 20 minutes, right? Because that's TIB, time in bed. So my time on the couch is 20 minutes, but it's probably going to take me 3, 4, 5 minutes to kind of fall asleep. So I end up with about a 15-minute nap, and I wake up and feel great. And they actually have compared a nap to caffeine. We feel better, more physical and mental energy with a 10-minute nap, 15-minute nap, because we stay in shallow sleep. When you go beyond sleeping for 20, 30 minutes, you accidentally slip down into deep sleep. And that's why if you've ever tried to wake somebody up and you can't wake them up, they're in deep sleep. If you hear a door close 4 houses away and wake up, you're in REM sleep, shallow sleep. So you want to either have a 20-minute nap or an hour-and-a-half nap so that you go down and back up. So big fan of naps. Yes, Jennifer, there is a time we can sleep too much, and it's called COVID and my mood being really down or really anxious, and I'm using sleep to just get away from the burden and craziness of life. Now, there's also some medical conditions and some mood at times that we'll sleep more, but we don't feel rested. And that's the important thing is, do you feel rested? So I would double check if you have any sort of medical conditions, and then just be mindful of, okay, is my mood down? Because sometimes when our mood's down, we can end up hyper sleeping, but we're not feeling rested. Um, Same with appetite, right? Sometimes the appetite completely goes away when our mood and stress is pretty bad. And sometimes we eat tons, but it's emotional, distracting eating. Um, Outside noises. Yeah, I'm telling you, I work with this doctor. He is so funny. He he's German, and so he doesn't say a lot. Um, and real efficient. He basically has a box fan, like a box fan in his bedroom on high every night. And for two reasons, temperature and the noise, because his struggle is middle insomnia. And so he uses it as white noise. The other thing you can do is earplugs. Either earplugs or sound machines tend to help with reducing those noises. And you got to remember, part of what people worry about is, I'm worried I'm not going to hear my alarm. Well, when does your alarm go off? Your alarm goes off as you're coming up out of deep sleep. And so we hear a little bit easier for us to hear noises when we're coming into shallow sleep. Sleep deprived, 30 years. No, we're not permanently. You just may have a vulnerability to sleep problems. And so there are some structures in the brain that regulate our sleep. I'd also go get a sleep study and just make sure that you do the little things like, okay, I don't have apnea, I don't have any obstructions, and you're doing all the sleep hygiene piece. And then I would look at, I love meditation apps. I think meditation apps slow our minds down so that if we do get into the shallow sleep, our minds aren't spinning. And I've had a number of clients that talked about that, doing that. And I've actually used that a couple of times, and quite well. I really like those. That's one of the things that is a pretty good go-to, but you might want to look at doing a sleep study. And yeah, you go, okay, look, I may have trouble sleeping at night, but take a page out of the handbook for elderlies. And I'm now in the 50s group, but we lose more sleep as we go. But think about what old people do. Old people take naps during the day. And so what you want to get is within a 24-hour period, you're like, how do I get 7.5 to 8 hours? That's what I want to shoot for. And so you go, okay, well, if I only got 4.5 or 5 last night, I want to make sure I get a good nap today. And I may take one in the morning and one in the afternoon if I can. Again, keep it short. I would say, set the alarm on your phone for maybe 25 minutes so that you might get a 20-minute nap, probably before lunch, because again, you want an empty stomach so your body's not working to process food. And then you're for sure going to have another one around 2:30 to 3. And some people, I've even seen some research talk about, you can, have a cup of coffee, lay down for a nap, because it takes about 20 minutes for caffeine to kind of kick in. You can lay down for a quick nap, and when you get up, you're at that same point where the caffeine is going to start to work. So don't give up on the chronic sleep. My guess is you haven't done or looked at all the things for sleep hygiene. I'll also touch on, let me get through some of these other questions. I've taken melatonin. Yes, melatonin does work for 20-ish% of people. But hey, give it a try. Turmeric, holy mackerel. I was so desperate to fix my sleep. There was this turmeric, which I guess is a root, and you put it in a little bit of water and drink it. Oh my gosh. If you could think about the worst cup of coffee you've ever had and then make it cold and then somehow make it worse. That's turmeric. But I drank it several nights and it just didn't seem to help me. There are some other sleep medications, and you may have to look at those. I work with a couple, happily married couple. It just kind of helped them with some transition with kids. I don't know how we got talking about sleep one time. They're in their late 50s. He has really shallow sleep problems. And so he will, if he's beyond 2 days of sleep loss, he'll go sleep in the guest room for a night or two to recover sleep, and then come back in and sleep in the master bedroom with his wife. There's a lot of communication that goes on in bed at nighttime. And so they've done a really good job of prioritizing sleep, but also prioritizing the relationship. I was really impressed with how they did it. 3 to 5 hours a night. That's interesting. You're exhausted the next day. Tiffany, you may be one that 6 is your ceiling for sleep. One of the places that we notice sleep loss is like literally eye-hand coordination tasks or concentration or memory. We don't remember things as well, and we don't consolidate them as well, meaning learning. When we sleep deprive ourselves for like 24 hours, we perform on eye-hand tasks at the same level as someone whose blood alcohol is 0.1. Yeah, I just said that mainly because that's what research said, that's how we function on eye-hand coordination tasks after complete sleep loss for 24 hours. Fatigue and sleepiness, it ranks right up there with drunk driving. So, what I would say is, Tiffany, you may look at tracking your sleep on something like an Apple Watch or Garmin, maybe even look into Whoop. They've got great articles on sleep, and you'll get a better idea of how much sleep you're actually getting, and then start rating and thinking about, okay, how did I feel today? How much sleep did I get? And that'll make it, prioritize it, and you'll get a better idea of, okay, no, I am a 6-hour person, or no, I'm 6.5, or so you're just going to have to gather data and look for patterns and trends. Yoga. Yeah. Oh, I so love that you said that, Gene. So if you do wake up in the middle of the night, if you get in bed, same if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall asleep or get back to sleep after 20 minutes, get out of bed and either go sit in the other room and under very low light, read a book, or it's funny, very light sort of stretching, a little bit like that sort of calming stretching for a lot of people helps them fall back to sleep. And yes, warm showers or baths before bed can also help people step into sleep. I don't know as much about the guided yoga nidra, but I love some of the meditation and I use it. That I think helps. How they tell us we got to turn our phones off every night because we got so much spinning in the background. That's what I love about either the guided meditation or breathing. It just helps to, we want to slow that body and that mind. And the more we do that, the better our odds are. I love Tim. I have taken sleeping medications before. The Ambiens and Lunestas. Sometimes you'll also end up with benzodiazepines for sleep. I'm not opposed to them. And why am I not opposed to them? Because sleep is that important to my mental health and yours. It's also that important right now to our physical health and immune system. So if all else fails and you've checked all the boxes on sleep hygiene and tried all those other things, then you may have to talk with somebody about a medication. But don't ask that medicine to do more than it can or should, because if we think we can work all day long, stressful, and then shut it down 30 minutes before bed and be asleep, that's just, now we're just talking about when you break, not if you break. So I would say really stay aggressive on the hygiene and routine and all the little things. Try some of these other things. And if you're still having trouble, yes, either look at a sleep study or go see a doc about looking at medications. What I'll do when I take sleep medicine right now, and again, you have to talk to your own physician about it. My problem is middle insomnia, and Lunesta has shown that docs tend to look at Lunesta for that middle insomnia. So I may take it a couple of nights in a row or a week or two in a row and then stop and then use something else. Or Ambien tends to be for falling asleep. Benadryl. Okay, here you go. Does Benadryl work for some? Yeah, it absolutely does. Do not take Tylenol PM or Advil PM. Your problem is sleep. It is not muscle pain and headache. Take generic Benadryl, diphenhydramine. The only reason Tylenol is in it is because the manufacturers of Tylenol can't sell a sleep aid without combining it with generic Benadryl. Buy generic Benadryl. It's diphenhydramine. It's what's in Tylenol PM plus Tylenol, Advil PM plus Advil. Just take generic Benadryl. That's also one that you could look at before looking at some stronger medications. Yeah, car naps are absolutely prescribed, provided you're pulled over on a safe, well-lit location. I don't know how many times I've gotten a 15-minute power nap in my truck. Yeah, I'm fine with that. What else? Oh man. Elisa, caring for elderly parents. The fatigue, it's called compassion fatigue, and we study it. It is real. You are physically exhausted and mentally exhausted. Do everything you can to get help and other help. And even when you do that, it's extraordinarily exhausting. So for you, on top of COVID, sleep has to be a priority. And that means you're going to miss out on some things. I mean, when the family's over and they'll be watching something on a weekend, well, obviously it hadn't happened since COVID, but I'm like, man, I got to go to bed, people. I've had a long week. I've got to get my sleep. It's shockingly important to us. I wish it wasn't. I wish I could steal more sleep, but you can't. So I would say do everything you can to get all the support you can, and just know you're in a season where you're going to have some sleep loss. You're going to have partial sleep loss for a while. Really guard against alcohol, really guard against the food at night. Really, really anchor yourself to sleep hygiene. And I think you might be surprised that you feel a little more rested. And look, if at all possible during the day, if you can steal a nap. It's huge. And I've been guilty of this one, don't ask caffeine to do more than it can. The reason that we have 6 cups of coffee is because 2 cups doesn't work anymore. Okay, well, let's bite the bullet, go through a weekend where you course correct back down to 1 cup, and it'll actually improve your sleep. So don't, when we rely too much on caffeine, it kind of disrupts us. So I'm good with those things. Do you need less sleep when you meditate? No, but you probably have a much greater peace during the daytime, but your body still needs it. So keep doing it. Yes, you need 7.5 and 8 hours. I love meditation and breathing. Big fan of it. And also be mindful. All medications have side effects. Some of them really goofy. Cpap, yes, 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 yes. CPAP is for sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is deadly. Think about it this way. You are depriving your oxygen to your brain, right? You're blocking the oxygen from your brain. There's not a worse thing, or very few things worse than starving our brain. It kind of runs the whole system. And so, yeah, you're going to have sleep with a CPAP. Absolutely. Make sure it's fitted. And every couple of years, make sure that, you just want to make sure that you got a good fit and a good tight seal. So it is hugely important. Does it matter what time we go to sleep? That's interesting. That's really good, Marie. A small variability, no. Shift workers, if you're a shift worker, it is what it is. But when you're swimming against the tide, you're going to have much higher rates of psychological diagnoses and physical diagnoses. It's our bodies, while we may adjust, we don't change. Our circadian rhythms are hardwired. And so it's really hard to be like a shift worker, but you can slide your shift. You can slide your sleep up to where, if you're in bed at 7 and like nurses, a lot of times, or some adjusted sleep schedules, you can push and pull it plus or minus a couple of hours, but that's about as much. Let's see what else. Oh man, chronic pain. Dang. Gosh, we could spend the entire time talking about chronic pain, and I feel your pain. Yeah, I've had long episodes, 6, 8, 10 months of chronic pain here and there. And man, it disrupts your sleep horrendously. What typically happens, my guess is, Jennifer, you probably have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep, because as you come into shallow sleep, you're aware of your pain. And then there's other times you probably have breakthrough pain that even in deep sleep, you'll wake up. So do everything you can to manage the sleep. And you may have to look at using some medications. And there are other alternatives to medicine, or other medications that can also help with sleep, that are non-addictive and sort of work in some different ways. Is melatonin long-term back? God, great question. I can't remember the research on that right now. Man, I apologize. Sorry, Mercy. I can't pull that one up. Ambien doesn't give real sleep. Okay. So, yeah, Ambien, all medicine has side effects. People actually die from taking aspirin every year. Just allergic reaction to it. Sleep medications are no different. Ambien, Lunesta, all of those are not classified technically as a benzodiazepine, but they are structurally very similar to benzodiazepines, and they have some odd side effects to them. That's why I say, if you have to take them for a little while, try to get into a pattern of taking them for a little while and then trying to go where you don't take them sometimes. And so use some of those other alternatives to see if those can't help you sleep, so that you can not take the things like Ambien or the other sort of more powerful medications. Yeah, and that actually gets a little bit to Jennifer's, your chronic pain and some of the other medications. And again, we don't think about having a sleep study or seeing a sleep doctor as much as we should. So if you've got some chronic issues, go see a sleep specialist. Go see your primary care doc and talk to them about your issues with sleep, and see if they can't help you with some ideas. And having sort of checked some of the boxes on sleep hygiene, it'll save you some of the low-hanging fruit when you talk to either a sleep doc or your primary care doc, and that may help sort of get some answers sooner rather than later. And I mean it, I would try everything before you step into some of that. Lavella's not one. Oh, lavender. Yeah. Have I tried? Yeah, I think I have tried that one. Here's the thing. Some of those things, even though they don't show real strong evidence from a statistical and research standpoint, I would say try all those things before you step into the stronger medications. Start with sleep hygiene and those fundamentals, and then step into some of the other things that we've talked about. Your melatonins, your turmerics, your lavenders, meditation, all of those things. If that doesn't work, then sort of step your way up to the Benadryl and to some of those other things. So that's just some couple of thoughts. Ooh, we're a couple of minutes over. So there you go. That's if you're not remembering dreams, funny. A lot of people don't remember dreams. We dream in REM sleep. Have like a dream diary, and you'll start remembering them more. It's not unusual for people to not remember dreams. So that's not all that odd. And it's not critical that we remember dreams. Freud wrote a ton about dreams, but the more we study dreams, what they do is, again, it helps us consolidate information. And that's the big piece of it. So, yeah, that's what you want to be able to do. Hey, how you doing? It's so good to see you. I'm so glad Bruno and Liz are on too. So that's awesome. All right, we're over. I know I'm over. So, hey, there you go, Tim.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And as you can see on Kevin's screen, it's definitely several places you can follow him on social media. And so I know a lot of alumni that do follow you there. And so, yeah. All right. Well, thank you. And take care, everyone.